There was once a little girl called Goldilocks, and she was called Goldilocks because she had beautiful golden hair. She lived in a house with her mother, and she'd always promised her mother that she wouldn't go down the path and she wouldn't go out by herself. But one day when the sun was shining, Goldilocks got up, she got herself dressed, she went downstairs and went outside. And when she looked outside of the house, the sun was shining and she could see in the trees that there was a bird. So she took 1, 2, 3 steps. And then she looked and she could see that there was a butterfly. And she took 1, 2, 3 steps. Then when she looked down on the ground, she could see that there were beautiful flowers. And Goldilocks, she took 1, 2, 3 steps. Now she was starting to get hungry and wished that she could go back home. But when she turned round, she didn't see the bird. She didn't see the flowers. She didn't see the butterflies. And she knew that she was lost and she started to cry. I wish that I'd never gone out into the forest by myself. And when she sniffed the air, she could smell something good. And when she looked, she saw that there was a house. And on the windowsill of the house there were 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge. There was a great big bowl. There was a middle-sized bowl. And there was a very small bowl. Goldilocks walked over towards the 3 bowls of porridge, picked up the spoon by the side of the big bowl of porridge, and she tasted it, and it was hot, 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 hot. It was too hot. Then she tasted the middle-sized bowl of porridge, and it was too cold. Then she picked up the spoon for the small bowl of porridge, and it wasn't too hot, and it wasn't too cold, and it wasn't too sweet, and it wasn't too salty. It was just right, and she ate it all up. When Goldilocks looked in through the window of this house, she could see that there were 1, 2, 3 chairs. She opened up the door, and she could see that there were 3 chairs. There was a very tall chair. There was a middle-sized chair, and there was a very small chair. Goldilocks sat down on the big chair, but it was hard and lumpy. Then she sat down on the middle-sized chair, and it was too soft and feathery. She sneezed. Then she went and sat down on the small chair, and it wasn't too big, and it wasn't too small, and it wasn't too high, and it wasn't too hard, and it wasn't too soft and feathery. It was just right. But she started to rock backwards and forwards on the chair, and the chair broke with a great big crash. Goldilocks picked herself up, and she went upstairs. And when she went up the stairs, she could see that there was a bedroom, and in the bedroom there were 1, 2, 3 beds. There was a long bed, there was a middle-sized bed, and there was a small bed. She lay down on the long bed, but it was hard and lumpy. Then she lay down on the middle-sized bed, and it was soft and feathery. But then, when Goldilocks lay down on the small bed, it wasn't too hard, it wasn't too soft, it was just right, and Goldilocks fell fast asleep. Now when she was asleep, the owners of the house came back, and they were 1, 2, 3 bears. There was a great big daddy bear. There was a middle-sized mummy bear, and there was a very small baby bear. But the 3 bears looked at the 3 bowls of porridge, and Father Bear said in his deep gruff voice, "Who's been eating my porridge?" And Mother Bear said, "And who's been eating my porridge?" in a polite voice. But little baby bear, he started to cry and went, "Who's been eating my porridge? And they've eaten it all up." The 3 bears went in through the door, and they looked at the 1, 2, 3 chairs, and Father Bear said in his deep gruff voice, "Who has been sitting in my chair?" And Mother Bear said, And who's been sitting in my chair? In a polite voice. But little baby bear, he started to cry. Who's been sitting in my chair and they've broken it into pieces? The three bears went upstairs, and when they came to the bedroom, they looked at their 1, 2, 3 beds, and Father Bear said in his deep gruff voice, "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" And Mother Bear said in a polite voice, "And who's been sleeping in my bed?" But little baby bear, when he looked down, he could see Goldilocks asleep in his bed, and he went, "Who's been sleeping in my bed? And they're still there!" Goldilocks jumped up, and she ran as fast as she could, down the stairs and out of the path and through the trees. And she ran, and as she ran back home to her own house, there she could see the flowers and the butterfly and the bird, and she knew that she was getting close to her home. And who was standing there outside of her house but her mother? And when she told her mother about where she'd been, her mother said, "Goldilocks, Goldilocks, you should never go out by yourself." Goldilocks promised that she never would go out by herself. And she sat down and she had a huge bowl of porridge for her breakfast in her own house. And from that time, she never went out by herself. And Goldilocks and her mother and the three bears lived happily ever after.